I'm Tony Messia with the Charlotte Ledger, drinking out of my Charlotte Ledger coffee mug this morning, joined by Ashley Fay and Lindsay Banks on our team. How are you
Hello.
two doing this morning?
Hanging in there. I was just on Charlotte Talk, so I'm ready to go.
So if you're watching and want more observations and insights from Ashley, you can go check out Charlotte Talks. I think it replays tonight at, what is it, 7 or 8, and they put it as a podcast available online. A
Been
lot of
delayed
good.
Friday night for everyone.
Oh yeah, right. If you have don't have big weekend plans, you could do that. But this is our reporters roundtable with the Charlotte Ledger. We just like to kind of unpack some of the news of the week, and we'll take questions. You can put them, I think, in the chat or at the messages at the bottom. See, we have a bunch of people coming in, and thank you. We're talking about a few of the things that we wrote about this week, a few things we reported on, and things that we've got some observations on. I think the first one that we want to talk about, we've talked about this several times on these reporters roundtables, which, by the way, we like to do every couple of weeks. It's just sort of a nice way to to go a little deeper on some of this information. But one of the ones we've talked about a lot is this I-77 expansion plan. And it really seems like opposition to it is starting to gain a little bit of traction. There have been a few meetings in the last couple of weeks, neighborhood meetings. There was one that Charlotte City Council member Malcolm Graham had last week that got pretty heated with people saying, listen, the expansion of this and adding toll lanes near Uptown is going to knock out a bunch of houses in historic neighborhoods, black neighborhoods. And there's a lot of consternation about that. Now, at the same time, this has been on the books for a long time, but now that the concrete plans are out, you're starting to see the opposition mobilize. And this is a dynamic, I think, that you see a lot in these sort of things where these plans exist for a long time. They're not super controversial, but then as it gets right to the point of it happening and you have specifics, that's when the opposition cranks up. Is that something that you've seen, Ashley?
Yeah, I think so. With NCDOT last week saying that their preference is to build elevated lanes through Uptown, above where 77 is today. They say that this is less disruptive for the West Side neighborhoods, especially areas like McCrory Heights, where in the original plan, at least 7 or 8 homes would have been demolished, which of course, drew the ire of that neighborhood. Less impact on a historically black cemetery on the West Side, maybe a little less impact on Fraser Park, which we know is beloved on the West Side. But West Charlotte neighborhood leaders and Sustain Charlotte and other groups are still saying this is not good enough. We still don't think this is the right approach, and they are pressing city council members, as you mentioned, Tony. Council member Graham's town hall last week was extremely controversial. A lot of just screaming and protests and just people very upset about the plans. But I think this is something that is kind of inevitable. I mean, NCDOT and city leaders have said this is coming, it's happening. What can be done at this point, I think, is a big question. But yeah, I think West Side neighborhoods, this is the third time in Charlotte's history that our neighborhood has been impacted by a highway plan.
Yeah, Steve Harrison of WFAE had an article that we published this week in our newsletter that was formerly known as Transit Time that we're now calling Charlotte in Motion, looking at regional growth, including transit and transportation. And he made the interesting point, reported piece, of course, that it's interesting to watch political leaders sort of try to wash their hands of this, that this was put in motion. These plans have been there for a long time. There's a regional planning body called the Charlotte, I'm going to get this wrong, Charlotte Regional Transit Planning Organization, PO, KURTPO, or do you know what they say on that? Do we know what
I
that's
don't
called?
know, but
It's
it's
something like that.
technically
CRTPO.
transportation planning organization.
Transportation planning. Yes. Okay. Sorry. And so, that basically it's this body of elected officials. They kind of put this thing. They gave it the green light a year or two ago. And can they rescind that green light? Can they turn on the red light if they want to on this project? And the thinking is they might actually be able to. So, political leaders are trying to say, well, talk to NCDOT. This is in motion. We had no idea we were going to lose homes in these neighborhoods. But political leadership might need to, they might get involved. And so we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is a big freeway. I-77 carries tens of thousands of people a day. There are a lot of wrecks. There's a lot of congestion. We've covered this extensively for the last few years, but right now people are really tuning in. It's become really hot. Lindsay, I know you've been to some of those meetings. What's been the flavor of some of those?
Yeah, I went to a NCDOT kind of like press conference back right after they released the preliminary plans, which I guess was a couple of months ago. And it was just more of a time for them to explain the plans, and take some question from the media. But I will say that town hall I guess it was last week or earlier this week, whenever that was with Malcolm Graham, the Ledger, we didn't have someone there, but I've seen a bunch of video clips on social media from different angles, and it did get heated, and there was a lot of yelling. But I will say, I think the main reason for that is because looking at the agenda, there was only 5 minutes allotted for questions from the audience, and so that's kind of why we saw a little bit of the heat and the yelling. You've probably seen some of the videos; they've gone viral on TikTok and Instagram. But I mean, yeah, I think that's kind of one of the obviously what we've talked about being controversial and why, residents are against this plan because of the noise pollution and just general pollution. And it's also encroaching on these historically Black neighborhoods. But I think another reason is that NCDOT has been saying for the past few months that they're, continuing to have conversations and listening to community members. And then it seems like these final plans that came out, no one was expecting them. They seemed a little surprising. Um, I mean, obviously they were going to come to a final decision, but I think when it happened and then they kind of just put out the plans and were like, here they are. And there wasn't really any further discussion. I think that also contributed to a lot of the heat that was at that town hall meeting.
All right, I'd like to move forward. Obviously, that's gonna, that'll play out over the next few weeks. Or, be some decisions and some more discussion on that for sure. And we'll be, of course, following that along with our partners at WFAE and others. Moving along, early voting started this week. It started on Thursday. I don't know that a lot of people are tuned in to this election or realize that there is an election. Maybe you've seen a few signs, or maybe you haven't. There aren't a lot. While there are some high profile offices, U.S. Senate, House, there are not a lot of really, I wouldn't say interesting and competitive races. There are a few. Obviously, the Mecklenburg sheriff's race, that's been getting a lot of attention. You saw Sheriff Gary McFadden, who was was basically hauled up in front of somewhat hostile Republican legislators in Raleigh who wanted him to explain himself. That's going to be an interesting race to watch. There are a few legislative races that we wrote this morning in our newsletter about an NC House race in the University City area where Carla Cunningham, who's a Democrat incumbent, is being challenged and they're trying to paint her as a Trump Republican for having broken with the Democrats. There are flyers with her with a MAGA hat that are being sent to households up in the University City area. So there are a few things percolating. Early voting runs through, I believe it's February 28th every day, and I think it's 19 sites in Mecklenburg County. You can check out theelectionhub.org, which we've partnered with. It's a nonprofit. We contribute some resources and editing to that to try to give impartial election information. Ashley, Lindsay, are you hearing any buzz about the election?
Not really. To your point, Tony, I mean, it just feels like it's not a super competitive race. We know the primaries, especially even in a midterm year, are the turnout's not great. But I'll steal something from Steve Harrison that he offered on Charlotte Talks this morning. It's only one day, so we can't really say too much. But yesterday, turnout was substantially actually better than where it was 4 years ago. Just to compare, it's only one day. It's not a big data set. But to his point, it feels like the Democrats might be especially motivated to turn out for elections this year, even if they're not as, maybe concerned about the local races. A lot of the Democrats are just kind of motivated and energized by how they feel about President Donald Trump. So I think that will improve turnout this year. But to your point, Tony, just not really a lot of surprises in this current election.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of interesting. This is a primary election, of course, and so usually in the general election and off-year elections, that's bad for the incumbent party that's in the White House. Here, you have Democrats running against Democrats, Republicans running against Republicans. So we'll see how that shakes out. And also, a lot of these races, the primaries are going to decide them in a lot of cases because for example, Democratic safe seats, in many cases are not Republicans running in November. So it's all going to be settled in the primaries. A lot of these will be settled in the primaries. And you have a county commission election. You got 3 at-large seats. You have a few district races. But definitely, if you want to study up and get out there and vote, The electionhub.org, I think, is a good resource. Like I say, that we've helped with. And the election is March 3rd, Tuesday, March 3rd. And we've got early voting every day now from now until February 28th. I want to talk a little bit about some jobs numbers that came out last week that we wrote up Monday, and that kind of took off. I saw it, also reported later in the week by other media. The idea that the Charlotte region added more than 37,000 jobs in 2025, which you hear a number like that, it's like, is that a lot or is that not a lot? I don't know. It actually turns out it's a lot. It's the second most of any metro area in the country, behind only New York, which added, I think, about 48,000. New York is 7 times bigger than Charlotte. So Charlotte is kind of punching above its weight on jobs numbers. Nationally, the story has been job creation slowing. It's actually has accelerated in Charlotte, at least in 2025. I think you're going to see this as kind of a Chamber of Commerce talking point over the next few weeks and months. The a job haven. Obviously, there are a lot of people looking for jobs, and you talk to some job seekers, and it's a little bit tough out there in some industries. But overall, Charlotte creating more jobs than all of its peers, certainly, and a lot of much bigger cities. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to people in commercial real estate, they always are touting all the relo activity that's in the market right now. I mean, we definitely saw American Express kind of finalize their lease. Pacific Life is expanding here, and you're hearing about a few other names kind of in the market right now. So I think a lot of this is ironically coming from New York, even though they added more jobs than us. A lot of financial services kind of relocating to Charlotte, which has been a story we've seen here for a really long time. But I think that's driving a lot of it. But yeah, to your point, I think it's going to just certainly be a talking point among some of the boosters here in Charlotte for the next, year probably.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection. It didn't occur to me, but you always hear in Charlotte about everybody from New York is moving here. Well, obviously somebody's moving to New York and taking jobs in New York. I don't know whether it's going the other way, whether people from Carolinas are up in New York, whether people in New York City say, "What's with all these North Carolinians up here?" I don't sense that that's the case.
Maybe.
Who knows? Ashley, you wrote this week about a project in Charlotte's historic West End. Could you talk a little bit about that and the significance of that and what that might mean for other, similar mixed-use projects?
Yeah, this project's been like really touted by a lot of city leaders. It came up this week at city council. It was talked about in committee meetings last week because you just don't see projects like this get proposed a lot in Charlotte. Basically, it's mixed income, mixed use, right on a transit line. It is the streetcar, not the blue line, but that's still transit oriented development. And it's going to have the West End's first grocery store, full service grocery store, in many many decades. So this is something that city leaders would like to see more of. They think this is the model for Charlotte, especially some of these corridors that have gentrified really quickly, where we've seen a lot of displacement. But in my real estate whispers this week, I really wanted to point out, like, it took a lot for this project to even get to this current point, and we're still not at a point of groundbreaking. The Nye Foundation has contributed a $6 million grant to bring the grocery store, which will be a Weaver Street Market. If anyone's from the Triangle area, they have 4 locations in Orange and Wake County. And not only that, LISC is involved. The city is poised to spend about $4 million to acquire land to build this project. It's likely that the developer, who is working with Historic West End Partners, which is leading the project, will probably come back for some kind of more additional subsidy. We know affordable housing usually has to get some kind of tax credits or some other types of subsidy to make it happen. So I guess my point here is there's a lot of funding, a lot of partners, a lot of pieces that have to come into place to make something like this work. So I wanted to talk to some of the people involved and ask, can we do this again in Charlotte if this is heralded as the project? And of course, there's a lot of optimism about it. There's a lot of excitement about it. But I just think the reality is, we don't have endless funds in the Housing Trust Fund. We don't have endless revenue from developers who pay a fee to go higher in their projects, which is what is kind of funding this land acquisition. The Knight Foundation probably can't give a subsidy to every kind of project that wants to get built like this. So I think there's still a lot of questions about how do you replicate something like this. But anyway, I don't want to ramble too long about it. I just think it's one of those things you don't see get built a lot in Charlotte, and it's a challenging thing to make happen.
Well, that was a good piece. I have Real Estate Whispers, which you author every week, that takes deep dives on some of these projects and lots of scoops, things going on for growth and development. So people should definitely check that one out. Another one they should check out, another one of our newsletters, restarting for the soccer season, actually today is the first one of the season for Football Friday, which are look at Charlotte FC. But Lindsey Banks, you went to a Carolina Ascent game. That's the women's pro soccer team. They had their home opener last weekend. Why don't you tell us about that and what's going on with Carolina Ascent?
Yeah, so for those who don't know Carolina Ascent, they are the only professional women's sports team in Charlotte. And the team kind of launched, I guess it was about 2 years ago now, with the inaugural or the league. The league launched with the team. So Charlotte was one of the first 9 teams in the league, and it's called the Gainsbridge League, but it was formerly known as the USL Super League. And I had known about Carolina Ascent living in Charlotte, but I had never been to a game before. And so I really wanted to go to one. So I went to one last Saturday and kind of wrote about my experience. And I went I went into the game with a very open mind, knowing, it was playing at a smaller stadium, the American Legion Stadium,
Memorial Stadium.
Memorial Stadium. Um, and uh, and so I kind of I knew that it wasn't going to be like a Charlotte FC game, which plays at Bank of America, and that's the men's professional league, the MSL, if people are familiar with that, with Charlotte FC. And obviously they have a huge fan base. They play at a much bigger stadium. And so when I walked into Memorial Stadium, it was about what I expected. A few hundred people, a very nice stadium, has a great view of Uptown, very similar to Bank of America. It's just, I guess, the opposite side of Uptown. And I really had a great time. I was really impressed. I'm not a huge soccer fan typically, but I did play. Obviously, I feel like most people play when they're kids. So I knew enough about the game to understand at least what was happening on the field. And I was just really impressed with the whole experience. So I just kind of wrote about that experience and how women's sports, are having a moment. And Carolina Ascent is a huge part, I think, of Charlotte's growing soccer scene and identity. And it is a little bit overlooked because historically women's sports and athletics are overlooked. But they're really doing a great job over there, especially building the spectator experience and trying to get people in the stadium. Because I think once people go to a game and they realize how good it is, and the tickets are very accessible. They start at $19. That's kind of how you get people in, and then when they see, then they keep coming back. But if you haven't been to a Carolina Ascent game and you're interested in soccer, I definitely recommend checking it out because I had a great time.
Yeah, I would just say one of the cool things about Charlotte is you're seeing so many more things to do, and maybe soccer isn't your thing, but there's all these clubs and even not even sports, but hobbies. I mean, it's really sort of. I've been in Charlotte for what 25 years, and just the rounding out of the number of activities and things to do has been pretty astonishing during that time.
Agree.
Uh, all right. Well, we're also another quick plug, Football Friday, which covers Charlotte FC. That's coming out today. Carol Walton has a really good story about the coach of Charlotte FC, Dean Smith, and sort of what he learned from his father, who had Alzheimer's and sort of deepening dementia as Dean Smith was rising up in the coaching ranks in England. So it's a really touching story. But we'll be covering that every week. Um, so you're watching the Charlotte Ledger Reporters Roundtable. Just before we leave, want to note that tomorrow is Valentine's Day. For all of you people out there that has not occurred to you, and you have a significant other that you need to do something for, your time is running out. Lindsay, you talked to a florist, I think, last week. What did you learn about what some of the trends are for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, I think we were kinda thinking last week, like, what's the scene with florists, especially coming up with, Valentine's Day, but also tariffs right now are really affecting the prices, and I think you've probably noticed that maybe in grocery stores that the cost of flowers have gone up recently. So yeah, we just wanted to check in and see what's going on, with florists in Charlotte, and, I think at this point today, if you have not placed an order for a bouquet with a florist, chances are that's not gonna happen for you. There are grocery stores, obviously, that maybe you can pick up a bouquet, but, we just kinda talked about the trends and how, roses are out, not fully out, but there aren't as many people ordering just a clean, simple dozen roses, partially because of the price. It's gone up I can't remember exactly how much, but it's gone up significantly, the price, I think just across the board about 35%, and so that's one reason, but also I think people that are ordering flowers for their loved ones maybe have a better idea on what flowers their loved one prefers. And so, Midwood Flower Shop is the shop that I spoke to last week, and they were just telling me how a lot of people request, like they come in and they have specific requests for tulips and calla lilies. And I think Tony, you said something, you said something like you were kind of shocked that men were, requesting specific flowers. But I feel like
I think
if
men, I don't know. My sense is I don't know that men know the flower varietals enough to go in and request some of those ones you just mentioned. So, if there are guys watching this, I'm curious. And we talked also about how the scene I love is going into Harris Teeter's at like 4 p.m. on Valentine's Day and watching all the clueless guys try to quickly grab something that looks thoughtful. Do the two of you, if there are any of those clueless guys out there, do the two of you have any advice for what it is that women would like?
I mean, I feel like I have a favorite flower, and so I feel like and I think that's common knowledge among my friends and family and loved ones, my favorite flower. So I feel like it's not crazy to expect men to know what type of flower to order at a florist. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. Ashley?
I mean, I think to Lindsay's point, know your woman. Like, if she doesn't want flowers, I'm not a flowers person myself, but if someone were to present me a bouquet of Criterion Collection DVDs, I'm not going to say no to that. So, like, I think just knowing, what your partner wants and showing that you put some thought into it. Maybe don't show up with carnations. I think that's probably advice for every man and every partner out there. But, it doesn't have to be a dozen red roses. Just put some thought into it.
Okay, that's good advice. If you have to ask right now, you might already be behind the 8 ball, it sounds like. And what if what if your wife or girlfriend says, "You don't have to get me anything." Is that true or is that a trap?
Depends very much on the person. I mean that when I say that, but I don't know that every woman does.
yeah, and I would say obviously I think going out to dinner is a safe option, but I think around here you probably needed to have a reservation a couple weeks ago at the very least. So if you haven't made a reservation for tomorrow, especially with Valentine's Day being on a Saturday, you also might be a little late there. So
But
maybe a
you
home
could
cooked
pull
meal.
this move. Couldn't you pull the move where it's like, look, who needs to go out? Let's just cook in. Let's just cook in. We'll get a bottle of wine, then get some lobster tails or something like that. Because I will tell you, I don't love going out on Valentine's Day because what the restaurants do is they restrict the menu and they bump up the price. And so you don't have the choices that you do, and it winds up being a lot more expensive. Obviously, it's a special occasion. So, you know,
Just
I,
know
I,
your partner. They might they
I'm
might prefer
I'm
that.
good with it. That's
That
true. Okay, some good advice. So don't say the Charlotte Ledger never gave you any good, useful advice. We have an honest, heart to heart Valentine's Day advice for people like us who know. So anyway, I see the eye rolling, but that's probably good. That's probably enough for now. Any final thoughts? Anything else that caught your eye this week, Lindsay or Ashley?
Hmm.
No, I feel like we've covered it. We've just about covered everything.
Okay. Well, that'll do it. You can check out the Charlotte Ledger online at thecharlotteledger.com. We've written about just about all these stories and many more that we didn't even get to. So thank you for joining us and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.